Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Nitreg from nitreg.com, and for today's video, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the different levels of poker thinking. Just to let you guys know now, there are three different levels. One's not necessarily better than the other, but I'll kind of show you how you can view these levels and adjust to them, what they mean, how to put your opponents on different levels, etc., etc. Anyway, so the first level thinking means thinking about only your hands. This is literally like you're not thinking about anyone else other than what's in front of you. And many bad players are like this. If you go to casinos and stuff, or just play online, there's going to be those players that just want to see flops and see how their hand connects, and they don't really think or care about any other people and what they might have. So the second level thinking equals thinking about your opponent's hand and how you can play your cards versus that hand range. That's actually thinking about what your opponent might have and how your hands do against those players. Third level thinking is thinking about what your opponent thinks you have, how he will adjust his range, and how you should adjust your range based on this adjustments. So that's it's really advanced because you're thinking on a different level than other people, and you're trying to think about what they think that you think. That they, sorry, a tongue twister. You're trying to think about what they think that you have, and it gets into this big game of trying to outlevel your opponents, and that's called leveling. And you try to be one step ahead of the other. So oh well, he thinks that I think that I'm going to do this, and so I'm going to do this, and then your opponent might think, oh well, he thinks that I thinks that he thinks that I'm going to do this, and it goes on and on and on, and eventually, you just want to be at one level ahead of your opponent. It gets kind of I guess it can go on infinitely, but essentially all we talk about are the first three levels. So first level thinking example. So first level player, or 1LP, loves playing aces, so he limps in middle position with ace two of spades. The button raises and everyone else folds. First level player calls because he likes his hand. So notice he doesn't really even think about what raising ranges mean or what it means if he raises versus his opponent's ranges or anything like that. He's just limping because he wants to see his ace and how it connects. So the flop is ace king jack, and it's rainbow, but he has backdoor flush draw, and he's got top pair. So first level player loves top pair and leads out. The button raises, and first level player calls because he has top pair. I see a ton of people doing this where they're not thinking about your range or your move or what they could do to induce stuff or anything like that. All they literally think about is just, oh, I've got top pair, I'm just going to go ahead and bet out now and see what happens. And then when they get raised, they don't think about what that means. They're just like, well, I guess I still have top pair, so I'm going to call. And it's in this case, it's pretty bad. So the turn is a four of spades, picking up a flush draw. So first level player check calls a pot size bet because he picked up the flush draw. This play isn't necessarily that bad in this hand, but again, he's not thinking about what his opponent's bet sizing means, what his opponent's betting means. All he's thinking about is, oh hey, I've got top pair with the flush draw. So the river is the eight of diamonds. He completely bricked. He has top pair, but that's about it. No kicker at all. First level player check calls off his stack because he still has top pair. So this is pretty standard type of example hand where just first level players what first level players do. It might not always be this bad of play, but first level play it just generally indicates that the player isn't really thinking about anything else other than his hand. I just decided to choose a really bad example to just like overemphasize what it looks like. So second level thinking example. So second level player, 2LP, raises in the cutoff with king jack. A fairly aggressive bad player calls on the button, and everyone else folds. So the flop is king 10-8 with a heart draw, so there's two hearts out. Second level player C bets for value as he thinks worst player will have tons of draws and dominate hands. So he's thinking about his range. His opponent is very loose and will have all sorts of stuff like draws, like flush draws, straight draws, pairs, all sorts of hands that are in his range. So he's thinking about that, and it's in this hand. It's very obvious to go ahead and C bet top pair for value. So the turn is a 5. It's offsuit, and second level player barrels again for value. And this is strictly just because he's got top pair, and he's trying to get value against what he perceives his villain's range is, which are a ton of draws, maybe some worse hands. So the river is a 2 offsuit, completely bricked. And second level player knows that the fish will bluff if all of his misdraws 100% of the time. Second level player decides to check call to bluff catch and is shown ace jack with a miss heart flush draw. So, we're not always going to know that a player is going to do something specifically 100% of the time, but there are players out there that you get reads on that, will bluff when they miss draws, or, they'll play certain hands certain ways. And in this certain situation, this guy had that read, and since he was thinking about his opponent's range, he knows that a majority of his range is going to be very weak hands. So he decides to turn his hand into a bluff catcher, since he's probably not going to get too much value if he bets himself. He might get some against, maybe just like one random king X that he beats. Maybe middle pair looks him up. Maybe something like slow play jacks or queens preflop looks him up. But other than that, it's just gonna be a ton of draws. So this is just kind of like a good example of second level thinking. And let's move on. Let's move on to third level thinking. An example of this. So third level player is sitting in the big blind with king jack offsuit. The cutoff opens for 3 big blind and steals 40% from that position. Cutoff also folds to 3 bets 70% of the time. So he steals really wide, but then folds to 3 bets a lot. And the button is a lag who 3 bets to 10 big blinds. Third level player looks at Hold'em Manager 2 and sees he 3 bets 12% on the button. So as we can see here, this loose aggressive opponent who 3 bets all the time is more likely than not going to be bluffing this player as the cutoff player. He's going to have a really wide range, but he's going to fold a lot to 3 bets. So if he folds a lot to 3 bets and has a wide range, the standard way to play against that is to start 3 betting more as a bluff. So third level player knows that button is bluffing a lot here, and he has blockers. So he knows that button is aware of the cutoff's range and his range in the big blind, so he decides to 4 bet to 26 big blinds as a bluff. Both players fold, and third level player wins. So this is a really good result for the third level player. He's deduced all this different things, and he's come up with a conclusion that he can try to represent a very strong hand, because given the way that the board is played out, he's not only analyzed his range, but how his opponents view his range looks, and his range looks really strong. It's either going to be like a bluff or a really strong hand. So given that he should have some bluffs in his range in this spot, he figured that this spot would be a good spot to do it, and it obviously worked. So some notes on different levels. Most of my students and most winning microstakes players are somewhere between first and second level thinkers. It's just the way it is, I guess. How I've been looking, or just how I've been noticing it. Being on one level versus another level isn't necessarily bad. You just want to be one step ahead of your opponents. So if you're like playing on the second level, it's not like that bad of a thing. It's not that big of a deal. That goes into point number 3. Over adjusting is just as bad as under adjusting against our opponents. So if someone says, "Oh, well, you're playing on the second level, you must be a terrible player," that's not necessarily true. Because let's say your opponent is a first level thinking player, then you want to play in the second level. Whereas remember, your opponent is going to be a player who's not really thinking about anything other than his hand. So if he re-raises, then you want to just literally play your hand straight forward and fold most of the time. Or if he's checking, you just want to only be betting for value most of the time. Now, if you're trying to play like third level thinking poker against a first level thinking poker, that's usually when you start. That's usually when people start doing stuff like fantasy play syndrome, or they just start leveling themselves, and that's when they're trying to like bluff fish, and it's like they're trying to think like, oh well, I'm representing the nuts here. How does he call down? Like this is so insanely obvious. Well, again, you're not thinking about who your opponent is and what level your opponent's on. If your opponent is a first level thinker, there's no way that a third level bluff would work against him, assuming that he's a second level thinker, because he's not. He's a first level thinker. Um, I don't know. It's just, I think it's more or less theory wise. You should just be one level ahead of your opponent. So no matter where you think your opponent is, you want to be just one level above that. Um, yeah. So I think that's that. So exploiting first level thinkers. Most poker players fall into this category, and we need to be on the second level to be able to own these players. They only think about their hands, so it is our job to avoid them when they show strength and value own them when we have strong hands. So obviously, if they're like check calling down with draws and weak hands, but then when they have a nutted hand, they like check raise and do all that goofy stuff. That it's very easy to play against these players. Just play second level poker. If you see them check calling down, then just start value owning them really light. If you see them like check min raise the turn, then you can just go ahead and give up like top pair, good kicker. Pretty easy to play against these players. Value betting relentlessly in position is usually the best way to exploit them. Check out my video on why are we betting. It's on YouTube, or you can find it at natereg.com. I'll go ahead and try to link it to you guys. But this is going to be very important against these first level players, because you're going to have to think about ways to extract the most amount of value out of them and to avoid paying them off, which relatively is really easy, like in theory, but when you're in practice, it gets a little harder than that. Exploiting second level thinkers. Most good regs at the micro stakes are here. We need to think on the third level. So these players are pretty good at avoiding tough spots and are fairly good at extracting value from fish. Our strategy should be based on playing these players in position and put them in tough spots. So these players aren't going to be like, shoving money all over the place. They have pretty solid stats. They're not going to have too many like huge leaks or anything. They pretty much, what they do is they just play fairly tight and play in position and value own fish and all that standard stuff. So our strategy is just going to be to either avoid them or play in position against them and put them in as many tough spots as possible. So ultimately, these players don't adjust well because they think about your range as static and not elastic. So that's important because they're thinking about different people's ranges, but they don't think that those ranges necessarily adjust. So, like, let's say that you're playing and your opponent views you as a very loose player. Well, if he sees you as a very loose player and three bets a lot, he's not going to give you much credit against your three bets. So he's going to try to adjust to his perception of your range by four betting lighter, or he might start four betting as a bluff every now and again. So if you readjust your play and do third level play, you would realize that he's making these adjustments relative to what he thinks your hand range is. So if he starts four betting light, and let's say he's not calling out five bets, or let's just say he four bet bluffs a lot of the time, then you can start five bet bluffing a lot, or you can start, maybe the correct adjustment might be five bet shoving for value more often if you know that he'll just start four betting a really really wide range and then calling it off. So there's different adjustments you can make, but it's all dependent on the other player. But the important thing to notice here is that your opponent is going to try to adjust you, and he's going to make one adjustment and not really fluctuate his adjustments. He's basically going to deem that you're like super loose, and so he's just going to start bluffing you more, and he's not going to start readjusting. So it's important to find out what his adjustment is and then adjust to that. So exploiting third level thinkers. You can usually find these players at mid stakes and higher. They're virtually impossible to massively exploit. they are very very solid players, and they're gonna have a few leaks that are very very tiny, but they're not just gonna be like spewing off chips at all. Very rarely you're gonna find them in a spot where they're just spewing off chips and putting money in bad and have a bunch of negative EV plays. So we need to constantly be trying to adjust these players before they adjust to us. We should be looking to exploit very tiny edges. This is where game theory can come in as a defensive strategy, so we can't get exploited. More often than not, we should just avoid these players and start bum hunting the fish. So essentially, even if we are better than these third level thinkers, then our win rate is going to be so tiny against them that the rake is probably just going to eat us alive. So it's just most likely the best play is to just avoid these players. You're not going to encounter them too much unless you're at mid stakes or higher. But generally, just stay out of their way. Try to stay one level ahead of them when you are playing against them, and try to play in position because it'll make your life a lot easier, and you can start putting more pressure on them when you're in position. Essentially, if you're at a table full of like second and third level thinkers, maybe just decide to not play that table and start bum hunting the fish. That's perfectly okay. And for those of you that don't know, bum hunting just means just only playing at tables where you know that opponents are weaker than you. So there's no point in playing against people that are really good. That's just sounds like a really good way to lose all your money. Alright, well, I guess that's it for the presentation. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys want, go ahead and check out my Twitter account, twitter.com/nitregpoker. I would really appreciate it if you guys on my YouTube channel click subscribe in the top left. And if you guys are on my blog, nitreg.com, please go ahead and post your comments down in the comments section. And if you haven't already, go ahead and sign up to my posts and via email. You can do that in the top right. You'll be able to see an email contact form, and there's a bunch of other goodies that I'll send you through email as well. Alright, thanks guys. This is Nitreg from nitreg.com. See you guys later.